Sometimes the most important moments in life don't arrive with sirens or flashing lights. They arrive quietly, in the middle of an ordinary evening when one person decides not to look away. If you've ever believed that a single act of courage can change someone's entire future, stay with me until the end of this story, and if stories about bravery and compassion matter to you, make sure to subscribe to Kindness Stories. Because what you're about to hear proves that heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they're just parents out for dinner with their kids. It was a busy Friday night at a downtown restaurant in a small Oregon town, the kind of place with warm lighting, exposed brick walls, and the comforting smell of garlic butter and fresh bread drifting through the air. Laughter rose from crowded tables. Waiters weaved between chairs balancing trays, and soft music hummed beneath the conversations. At a corner table near the emergency exit sat a young woman named Lila Monroe, her hands wrapped tightly around a glass of water she hadn't touched. Her shoulders were tense, her posture stiff, and every few seconds her eyes flicked toward the glowing red exit sign above the door. To anyone casually glancing her way, she might have looked like she was nervous on a date or waiting for someone who was running late. But to Marcus Reed, seated across the room with his 9-year-old son, Caleb, something about her expression felt wrong. Marcus hadn't planned on being there that night. Caleb had just finished his school science fair, and after weeks of hard work on a volcano model that didn't quite erupt as planned, he had begged his dad for real restaurant food instead of their usual takeout. Marcus, who had been raising Caleb alone since his wife passed away 3 years earlier, couldn't say no to that hopeful grin. They'd been laughing about the volcano mishap when Marcus noticed Lila for the first time. She wasn't eating. She wasn't scrolling through her phone. She wasn't relaxed. She was watching. Specifically, she was watching a man seated at the bar, a tall man in a dark jacket who kept glancing back at her with a possessive intensity that made Marcus's instincts flare. Marcus had spent nearly a decade working as a paramedic before shifting to a quieter job to focus on fatherhood, and during those years he'd learned to read fear in people's faces. Leela wasn't bored. She was calculating. She kept unlocking her phone screen, staring at it without typing, as if willing a message to appear that would rescue her. When the waitress came to refill Marcus's coffee, he lowered his voice. "That young woman by the exit, has she been here long?" he asked casually. The waitress sighed softly. "She came in with the guy at the bar about 40 minutes ago." "She's barely touched her drink," Marcus nodded, his chest tightening. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but something about the way the man watched Lila felt less like concern and more like control. Caleb, blissfully unaware, was busy coloring a maze on the kids' menu. Marcus tried to refocus on him, but then he saw the man lean toward the bartender, gesture subtly toward Lila, and smirk. A few minutes later, the man stood and headed toward the restroom corridor, glancing back to make sure she stayed put. That was the moment Marcus made his decision. He rose from his seat, telling Caleb to stay close, and walked past Lila's table as if heading for the exit. When he reached her, he paused. Up close, he could see the faint shimmer of tears in her eyes. "Excuse me," he said gently, keeping his voice calm. "I don't mean to intrude, but you look like you're trying to solve a problem. Are you okay?" She froze, panic flickering across her face. For a heartbeat, she said nothing. Then, barely audible, she whispered, "I can't leave." "He'll follow me." Marcus kept his expression steady. "Do you want to leave?" Her fingers tightened around the glass. A tiny nod. That was enough. "All right," Marcus said quietly. "Here's what we're going to do. You're my cousin visiting from out of town. You're having dinner with me and my son, and now we're heading home. Just walk with us. Her breathing quickened, but she stood. Marcus beckoned Caleb over. "Buddy," he said softly, "this is Cousin Lila. She's coming with us." Caleb didn't question it. He simply smiled and offered Lila his small hand. Together they started toward the exit. Just as they reached the door, the bartender called out, "Hey, she's—" Marcus turned, his gaze firm but not aggressive. "She's with us." There was something in his tone that discouraged argument. They stepped outside into the cool night air, the hum of traffic replacing the restaurant's chatter. But the moment of relief was short-lived. The door burst open behind them, and the man stormed out. "Lila!" he shouted. "What do you think you're doing?" She stiffened, fear flashing across her face. Marcus stepped between them. "She's leaving," he said calmly. "With us," the man sneered. "You don't know her." "This isn't your business." Marcus didn't raise his voice. "She doesn't want to go with you." "That makes it my business." A few pedestrians slowed, sensing tension. The man hesitated, clearly aware that attention was turning toward him. He muttered a curse and retreated inside. Only when the door swung shut did Lila exhale fully. Marcus led her and Caleb to his truck, heart pounding but voice steady. "You're safe for now," he said as they drove away. In the quiet of the truck, Lila began to talk. The man Ethan had seemed charming when they first met. Flowers, long conversations, promises of security. But slowly he began isolating her from friends, criticizing her clothes, monitoring her phone. Tonight, when she refused to drink more than one cocktail, his mood shifted. She'd felt trapped at that table, terrified to cause a scene, but more terrified of what might happen later. Marcus listened without interrupting. He'd seen this pattern before. When they reached his modest home, Caleb eagerly showed Lila the guest room, chattering about his school projects as if hosting a sleepover. Lila smiled weakly, the first genuine expression Marcus had seen on her face. That night, Marcus called a trusted friend in law enforcement to quietly alert them. The next morning, they learned that Ethan had been detained after causing a disturbance at the restaurant and had a history of complaints from other women. Over the next week, Lila stayed with Marcus and Caleb while she arranged to move closer to her sister in another state. She began contacting support services, filing a formal report, and rebuilding her sense of safety on her final morning there. Sunlight poured through the kitchen windows as Caleb insisted she try his lopsided pancakes. Lila hugged him tightly, then turned to Marcus with tears in her eyes. "You didn't even know me," she said. Marcus smiled gently. "I didn't need to. I just saw someone looking at the exit." She left that day not just with a suitcase but with renewed strength. And Marcus returned to his quiet routine, knowing that sometimes the greatest difference we can make comes from paying attention and choosing to act. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's as simple as standing up from your table and saying, "You're not alone." If this story reminded you that small acts of bravery can echo for a lifetime, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Kindness Stories, where we share real moments of courage, compassion, and hope, because the world changes every time someone decides not to look away.